wide. The Bitterroot Mountains in the dead of January, 8,000 feet of pine and ice and a sky the color of beaten tin. Nothing moves out here, nothing should. Closer now. A single cabin on the high ridge, smoke curling thin from the chimney shutters bolted from the inside. A line of dynamite tripwires hidden beneath the snow along the only trail up. Closer still. Through the gun slit in the front door, the steady breath of a man who has not slept in 2 nights. A Winchester at the north window. 20 rounds in an apron pocket. Then the wide shot again, from the valley below. 14 riders heavy with iron coming up the pass at noon. At the head of them rides a man with one eye. Behind him, the silver-haired man who has crossed 3 territories to take back what he believes is his. Inside the cabin, a young woman in a calico dress steadies the rifle against her shoulder. She does not lower it. The midnight wind clawed at the cabin walls like something living. Something hungry. Something that knew her name. Adeline opened her eyes. She could not see clearly. Her left eye refused to open. Her right eye took in the room in fragments. A low ceiling of pine beams. The orange flicker of firelight on rough log walls. The smell of wood smoke and something else. Something medicinal. Sharp. Wild. Then she saw them. 3 men standing at the foot of the bed. Bearded. Massive. Silent. She tried to scream. No sound came out. Her throat felt scraped raw. Her lips would not part. There was a taste of copper on her tongue. Blood. Old blood. Her own. The tallest one stepped closer. Slow. Careful. Like a man approaching a wounded deer. His hand came up, empty, palm open. He said something, but the words did not reach her. The roaring in her ears was too loud. The roaring that might have been the wind, or her own heart, or both. She tried to move her arms, pain. White hot. She remembered, just a flash. A man with silver hair, a fist, the crack of bone, snow, pine trees that reached up forever, the sound of her own breath in the dark, and the red. So much red on white, her dress. She looked down. The deep crimson silk was gone. In its place, she wore a man's flannel shirt, far too big, soft from years of washing. It smelled of cedar and tobacco and something faintly sweet, something that made her chest tighten in a way she did not understand. Whose shirt was this? Whose bed was this? Whose were the hands that had changed her clothes while she lay unconscious in some unknown forest, in some unknown corner of this great, vast, unforgiving country? She closed her one good eye. She was 22 years old. She had crossed the entire continent on a promise written in faded ink. She had answered an advertisement in a Philadelphia newspaper. She had bought a one-way ticket with the last of her father's money. She had told herself this was the brave choice, the only choice. The choice a woman makes when she has nothing left to lose. She had been wrong about that. She had so much left to lose. She just had not known it yet. The tall man spoke again. This time the words found her. "Ma'am, you're safe. You're at the Callaway homestead. You've been with us 4 days." 4 days. She had lost 4 days. She tried to speak, to ask, to say something, anything. But the dark came back for her then. A wave of black warmer than the fire, sweeter than the silence. It pulled her under like a hand at the small of her back. She let it. The last thing she heard before sleep took her was a song. A man's voice, deep, worn, singing something she half remembered from a childhood that already felt like a story she had read in a book about somebody else. Beulah Land, sweet Beulah Land. She slipped under. Hello, friends. Before we go further into this story, take a breath with me. If you love tales of the American frontier of women who found themselves at the edge of the world and somehow built a home there, please subscribe. New stories every week. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? I always want to know who is sitting on the other side of this story. Now back to Adeline. Because to understand how she ended up in that cabin, we have to go back, all the way back, to Philadelphia, 6 months earlier, to the day her father did not come home. The Wickham house on Spruce Street had 3 stories and a brass knocker shaped like a lion. It had a piano nobody played anymore. It had a portrait of her mother in the front parlor, painted the year Adeline was born, the year her mother died. It had a kitchen that always smelled of cinnamon because the housekeeper, Mrs. Pell, had been making the same apple cake every Sunday for 30 years. It had a father until the day it did not. Adeline was 22 and unmarried, which was unusual, which was talked about, which her father insisted did not matter to him in the slightest. "You'll marry when you find a man who deserves you," he had said, more than once, always over coffee, always with that smile of his that made his mustache twitch on the right side. "And if no such man exists in Philadelphia, well, then we'll just have to keep you a while longer." She had loved him very much. So when the constable came to the door on a Tuesday in April and removed his hat and asked if he could come inside, Adeline knew. She knew before he opened his mouth. She knew from the way his eyes would not meet hers, from the way his fingers turned the brim of his hat round and round like a wheel that would not stop. Her father had been found in his office, the door locked from the inside, a bottle on the desk, a letter addressed to her. She read the letter 3 times. She did not believe a word of it. "My dearest girl, I have failed you in ways you must never know. The debts are mine. The shame is mine. I cannot face you. Forgive me." She did not forgive him because there was nothing to forgive, because she did not believe he had written it. Her father had been a gentle man, a patient man, a man who put sugar in his coffee even though his doctor told him to stop. A man who could not bear to put a mousetrap in the cellar because the killing of small creatures distressed him. He did not kill himself. She knew this in her bones. She knew this the way she knew her own name. But she could not prove it. And then the lawyers came. The debts were real. The debts were enormous. The debts had been signed for. With her father's hand. With witnesses. With seals. The Whitcomb house was sold. The piano was sold. The portrait of her mother was sold to a stranger from New York who paid $8 for it and did not even ask who the woman was. By August, Adeline had a small trunk, a cameo brooch, $47, and a single name written in her father's appointment book on the last day he was alive, Hollis Vance. The name meant nothing to her. It would soon mean everything. She would learn that name the way a soldier learns the sound of artillery, the way a sailor learns the look of a storm coming off the horizon, the way a woman learns the face of the man who has been watching her from across a room. But that day, in August, with her father 2 months in the ground, she only knew that she could not stay in Philadelphia. That city had killed her father. She did not yet understand how, but she knew, and she had to leave. She bought a newspaper, the Daily Inquirer, 3 cents. She turned to the back pages, to the section nobody respectable read, the personals. There were dozens, men out west, men in Texas, men in California, men in Oregon, men who needed wives, men who promised land, men who promised quiet, men who promised nothing but a roof and an honest day. One advertisement made her stop. Plain language, no flowery promises, just this. Mountain rancher, Montana Territory, age 32, honest, sober, widowed, seeks decent Christian woman of strong character, hard life, honest man, no deceit on either side. Eli Calloway, Lolo Post Office. She read it 3 times. She did not know why. She could not have said. But something in the words, in what was not said, in what was admitted, the widowed, the hard life, the no deceit. She felt as though the man who wrote it had also lost everything and was not pretending otherwise. She wrote to him that night. She told him the truth. Her father had died. The debts had eaten her childhood home. She had $47 left in a cameo brooch that had been her mother's. She was 22. She had never been married. She had never been touched. She could read and write and figure sums. She could sew. She could bake a passable loaf of bread. She could not ride a horse. She could not shoot. She could not, in her own honest assessment, do most of the things she imagined a wife in Montana would need to do. But she could learn, and she would not lie to him, not now, not ever. She signed her name, Adeline Whitcomb. She mailed the letter. She did not sleep that night, or the next night, or the next. 4 weeks later, a response. 3 lines. Miss Whitcomb, your honesty does you credit. I have 2 brothers. They live with me. The cabin is small. The winter is long. If you still want to come right again. Eli Calloway. She wrote again the same evening. 3 more letters passed between them across the autumn. He told her about the ranch, the sheep, the 2 horses, the well, the garden in summer, the way the snow came in October and did not leave until April. He told her his mother had died in childbirth with the youngest. He told her his father had died in a logging accident when Eli was 15. He told her he had raised his brother since. He told her he had been married once before. He told her his wife had died of winter fever 2 years ago. He did not tell her the wife's name. Adeline noticed. She did not press. She told him about her father, about the piano, about the apple cake, about the brass lion on the door, about all the small things you only think to mention when you know you are never going back. The 4th letter from Eli contained a ticket, train to Chicago, then to St. Paul, then west on the new Northern Pacific line, only finished that September, all the way to Helena, Montana territory. From Helena, a stagecoach to a town called Lolo. He would meet her at the inn there, 3 days after she arrived. He apologized for the wait. The trail to the cabin was 4 days' hard ride. He could not leave the ranch unattended longer than necessary. She held the ticket in her hand for a long time. She thought about her father, about what he would have said, about whether he would have approved, about whether he would have begged her to stay. She decided he would not have. She decided he would have put his hand on her shoulder and said the same thing he always said when she was frightened. The thing you are afraid of, my girl, is almost never the thing that hurts you. The thing that hurts you is the one you didn't see coming. She did not know yet how right he had been. She boarded the train on the 1st of November. The journey took 11 days. She slept sitting up. She ate apples and crackers and once a bowl of chicken soup at a station in Wisconsin that she would remember her whole life as the best thing she had ever tasted, though she could not say why. She watched America scroll past her window like a long, unrolling map. Cornfields, then prairies, then the Mississippi, then more prairies, then nothing for 2 whole days but grass and sky and the occasional herd of antelope running parallel to the train as if they too were going somewhere important. Helena was smaller than she had imagined, muddy, loud, full of men in heavy coats. The stagecoach to Lolo took 2 more days. The roads were not roads. The driver was kind, but did not speak much. He chewed tobacco and let her share the lap blanket when the cold became serious. He told her that the mountains they were heading into were called the Bitterroot. She liked the name. It sounded like a word a poet would invent. Bitterroot, the taste of something true. They reached Lolo on a Friday afternoon in the 2nd week of November. It was already snowing. The inn was called the Pinewood. It had 4 rooms upstairs and a saloon below. The keeper was a woman named Mrs. Hollister, whose husband had died in a mining accident the previous spring, and who had been running the place ever since with what could only be called grim competence. "You'll be Miss Whitcomb," Mrs. Hollister said before Adeline could give her name. "How did you know? You're the only young woman in a Philadelphia traveling dress to step off a stagecoach in Lolo this entire year. Mr. Calloway sent word. He's 3 days out yet. Snow slowed his trail. Room 6, end of the hall. Supper is at 6. Don't go in the saloon after dark, and don't talk to any man who doesn't tip his hat first." "Yes, ma'am." "And miss." "Yes." Welcome to Montana. Adeline went up to room 6. She sat on the bed. She held her cameo brooch in her hand. She tried to feel brave. She tried very hard. She did not yet know that downstairs in the saloon, a man with silver hair and pale gray eyes had been waiting for her to arrive for 3 weeks. She did not yet know his name, but his name was Hollis Vance, and he had not come to Montana for the weather. He found her on her second night. She had come downstairs for supper. Mrs. Hollister had given her a plate of stew and a piece of cornbread and told her to eat by the fire because the saloon side was rowdy that night. Adeline ate slowly. She watched the snow fall through the front window. She thought about her father. She thought about Eli Calloway and what he would look like in person. She thought about the strange, long sentence her life had become. A chair scraped at the table behind her. A voice said, "Miss Whitcomb." She turned. He was a tall man, older than she had expected of any man who would speak her name aloud in this place. Perhaps 50. His hair was that color of silver that some men get early, and that gives them a look of distinction they have not necessarily earned. His suit was Eastern made. His boots were not for snow. He was smiling. She did not like the smile. "Do I know you, sir?" "Not yet. May I sit?" "I would rather you did not." "That is unfortunate, because we have a great deal to discuss." He sat anyway. He set a leather portfolio on the table between them. He opened it. He took out a single sheet of paper. He turned it so she could read. She read it. She read it again. Her hands began to shake. It was a contract, notarized, dated 4 years ago. Her father's signature at the bottom. A signature she knew the shape of, like she knew the shape of her own face. The contract pledged her, Adeline Mary Whitcomb, to this man, Hollis Vance, as his future wife, in exchange for the cancellation of debts amounting to $11,000. She had been 18 years old when her father signed it. She had not known. She had never known. "You are mistaken," she said, "because nothing else would come out. I am not. My father would never have. Your father did, and your father knew exactly what he was doing. He came to me 4 years ago, Miss Whitcomb. He came to me because he was about to lose everything. The piano, the house, the portrait of your mother. He came to me and he begged. And I am a generous man. I am a patient man. I told him he could keep all of it. For a price. He paid that price gladly. You were that price. He would not have. Would not have. Did. The contract is in your hands. The court in Philadelphia has already ruled. You belong to me." "I belong to no one." He laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You have a very Philadelphia way of speaking, Miss Whitcomb. It is charming. It will be educated out of you. In time." She stood. He caught her wrist. His grip was not tight at first. It was simply there. It was simply not letting her go. And then slowly in front of the fire, in front of Mrs. Hollister, who saw the whole thing and went silent and did not move, the grip became tight. And then it became something else. She wrenched away. The wrist would bruise. The bruise would last for weeks. "Mr. Calloway is coming for me," she said. Her voice did not shake. She did not understand how. "He will be here in 3 days. He will." "Mr. Calloway will not be here in 3 days, my dear. Mr. Calloway will be told that you took ill and went home. Mr. Calloway will be paid a small sum for his trouble, and he will go back to his mountain and forget you ever wrote to him." "He will not." "He will, because by then you will already be in Cheyenne. And by then, Miss Whitcomb, you will understand what your father understood, that some debts are not paid in money. Some debts are paid in silence, in obedience, and learning what your name is now." She ran up the stairs. She locked her door. She put the chair under the handle. She stood in the dark and listened. Her father had not killed himself. This man had killed him, or had had him killed, because he had refused at the end, because he had tried to undo what he had done, because he had tried to save her. Her father had not been a coward. Her father had been brave, and he was dead, and she was alone, and she was not going to Cheyenne. She was not going anywhere with that man. She was going to die first, or she was going to find Eli Calloway, and she was going to find him tonight. She gathered what she could, the cameo, her shawl, 2 biscuits she had saved from supper wrapped in a handkerchief. She put on the crimson dress because it was the warmest thing she owned. She put her wool cloak over it. She left her trunk. She left everything else. She climbed out the window onto the porch roof. She dropped to the snow below. She fell and she got up and she ran. She did not know where she was going. She only knew which way was up. The trail to the Calloway place went east, into the Bitterroots, into the dark. She took the trail. She walked. She walked for hours. The snow began in earnest around midnight. She could no longer see the trail. She could no longer feel her feet. She could no longer feel her hands. She fell. She got up. She fell again. She thought about her father. She thought about him not as a man who had betrayed her, but as a man who had tried at the end to save her. She thought about him with his hand on her shoulder. She thought about him saying her name. She fell a third time. She did not get up. She lay in the snow under a pine tree, and she watched the flakes come down through the branches above her head, and they looked like stars falling. And she thought what a beautiful thing to be the last thing she saw. The dark took her then. Somewhere not far away, 3 men were riding down the mountain in the snow. They were going to fetch a stranger. They had no idea she was already at their feet. Eli Calloway had not slept well in 2 years. He had told himself he did not mind. He had told himself a man who runs a mountain ranch with 2 brothers and 90 head of sheep does not need to sleep well. There was always something to do. A fence, a lamb, a coyote, a roof. There was always something. Except in the night. In the night there was nothing. And in the night his mind went where he did not want it to go. To the empty side of the bed. To the cabinet where her clothes used to hang. To the silence where her voice used to be. He had buried his wife 2 years ago, or so his brothers believed. He had not buried his wife. He had buried an empty coffin. His wife had not died. His wife had left him. She had ridden out one morning while he was up at the high pasture mending a fence. She had taken the bay mare. She had taken $112 from the strongbox. She had taken her wedding ring off and left it on the kitchen table. She had not left a note, because what was there to write? They had said it all already, 100 times, in 100 fights, in 100 silences. She could not bear the cold. She could not bear the quiet. She could not bear him. He had ridden after her 2 days later when he came down from the pasture and found her gone. He had ridden as far as Helena. He had asked at every station. He had found the man who sold her the ticket east. St. Louis, the man said. She bought the ticket to St. Louis. Eli rode back to the cabin alone. He told his brothers she had died. He told them she had taken sick suddenly while he was up at the pasture. He told them he had buried her on the trail because he could not get her body home. He told them the grave was in a place too far for them to visit, and he asked them please not to ask him to take them there. He told them this because she had asked him once, years ago in a quiet moment, to never speak of her in shame if anything ever happened to her. He had loved her. He had loved her even at the end. He had loved her even when she stood in the kitchen and screamed that she was dying inside this cabin, and he was killing her with his quiet. He had buried her name instead of her body, and he had carved a marker out behind the cabin, and he had set a small headstone, and he had put a wooden cross, and he had let his brothers grieve a woman who was not dead, because the alternative was to make them grieve a woman who had simply not loved them enough to stay. 2 years he carried that lie, 2 years. And then his brothers, who had been worrying about him, who had been watching him slip further into himself, sat him down at the kitchen table one evening in late August and slid a folded sheet of newspaper across the wood toward him. "You're going to write an advertisement, brother," Caleb said. "I am not. You are." Caleb. Eli. That was the whole argument. The whole thing. 2 words and it was over. Because Caleb was the middle brother, and Caleb did not lose arguments. And Caleb had been raising himself alongside Eli since their father died. And Caleb loved him in a way that did not allow for refusal. Tobias the youngest slid pen and ink across the table. Tobias was reading a medical book. He did not look up. Just one, Tobias said. If she does not suit, she does not suit, nothing lost. Eli had written the advertisement that night. He had written it badly. He had written it honestly. He had written it as if he did not care if anyone answered. Someone had answered. Her letters had come over the autumn. He had read them by firelight. He had read them more than once. He had not told his brothers by how many times he had read them. She was honest. That was the thing about her. She was honest in a way that made his chest ache. She did not pretend. She did not perform. She wrote like a woman writing to herself, except she had let him read. He had sent the ticket. He had told himself he was sending it because his brothers had nagged him into it. He had been lying to himself about that too. They left the ranch before dawn on the day she was supposed to arrive in Lolo. The 3 of them. The snow had come early that year and the trail was already treacherous. Eli rode his big buckskin. Caleb rode the bay. Tobias rode the mule because the mule was sure-footed in snow, and Tobias was the smallest. They were a day late. The snow had slowed them. He had sent word ahead with a hunter going down for supplies, asking the innkeeper to tell Miss Whitcomb he would be 3 days delayed. He hated being late. He hated keeping her waiting in a strange town. He hated everything about this. And underneath the hating, he was something else he refused to name. He was nervous. He was possibly hopeful. He had not been hopeful in 2 years. He was riding down the trail at first light on the 3rd morning when Caleb pulled up short ahead of him. Eli, I see them. Tracks in the snow, coming up the trail, coming up the mountain, from the wrong direction. The direction of Lolo, the direction nobody should be coming from. Small tracks, small feet. A woman's tracks in blood. Not a lot, just enough. Just a dark, scattered trail of it leading off into the pines. Eli was already off his horse. Caleb was already moving. Tobias was already opening his medical kit. They found her under a pine. The big one 3 miles down from the cabin. The one with the low branches that made a kind of shelter. She was wrapped in a wool cloak gone white with snow. She wore a red silk dress underneath the color of arterial blood against the white. Her face was bruised so badly Eli could not tell what she looked like. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were blue. Tobias pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Alive, he said. Eli did not know yet. He could not know yet. Because her face was unrecognizable. Because she carried no papers. Because she had nothing on her but a cameo brooch and a handkerchief with 2 frozen biscuits inside. He did not know that the woman he had ridden down the mountain to meet was already there in his arms. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, because she did weigh nothing. She was small, she was light, she was nearly gone. He climbed back up the trail. Caleb led the horses. Tobias rode close, one hand on her ankle to feel for the pulse he could not stop checking. 3 brothers climbing back to the cabin in the snow with a dying stranger in the eldest brother's arms. The hymn came to Eli without his asking for it. His mother had sung it. His wife had sung it. He had not sung it himself in years. He sang it now, low under his breath. He did not know why. He only knew the woman in his arms had stopped shivering, and that was a bad sign, and he had heard somewhere that the sound of a human voice could call a soul back from the cold. Sweet Beulah land, sweet Beulah land, as on thy highest mount I stand. She did not wake, not that day, not the next, not the next. For 4 days she lay in his bed under 3 wool blankets in a bearskin. Tobias tended her wounds. He set the broken arm, wrapped the ribs, cleaned the cuts on her face. Caleb kept the fire burning hot enough to bake bricks. Eli sat in the rocking chair beside the bed for hours at a time and did not speak and barely ate and waited. He did not know who she was, but he knew this. A woman did not come up that trail in a Philadelphia silk dress, unless she was running from something worse than the snow. And whatever she had run from, whatever it was going to have to come through him. On the fourth morning, her eyes opened, the one that could open. Tobias was sitting closest. He moved so as not to startle her. He spoke very softly. "You are safe. You are at the Calloway homestead. My name is Tobias Calloway. The man at the door is my older brother Caleb. The man by the fire is Eli. We found you 4 days ago. You were nearly gone. You are going to live. Do you understand me?" She blinked, slowly, once. "What is your name?" Tobias asked. "If you can say." Her lips moved. The sound came out a whisper, "Adeline Whitcomb." The cup Caleb had been holding fell from his hand. It hit the wooden floor and rolled. Tobias went very still. Eli by the fire did not move at all. He did not move for what felt like a long time. He simply stood there with his back half turned and the orange light flickering on the side of his face and his huge shoulders rising and falling once, twice. Then he turned. He crossed the room in 3 steps. He knelt by the bed. He looked at her for a long moment. He looked at the bruised face, the split lip, the closed eye, the face he could not even recognize as belonging to anybody, much less to her, much less to the woman whose letters he had read by this same firelight a dozen times in a dozen quiet evenings. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was rougher than he meant it to be. "I'm Eli Calloway." She closed her good eye. A tear slipped out from under the lashes. She had made it. She had made it after all. She had no idea yet that she had also brought the storm with her, that the man with the silver hair was still down in Lolo, that he was already paying men to look, that the world she had thought she was running into, the cabin on the mountain, the honest man, the new life, was already even now in the same room as the world she had been running from. But that came later. That night she only slept. She slept while 3 bearded brothers stood in their kitchen and tried to understand what had just happened in their bedroom. She slept while Caleb cursed quietly in the corner. She slept while Tobias washed his hands in the basin 3 times in a row. She slept while Eli stared into the fire and did not say anything to anybody for a very long time. When he finally spoke, it was to himself. "It was her," he said, "the whole time. It was her." He put another log on the fire. The wind came up against the cabin walls. The mountain kept its secret one more night. She got stronger slowly, day by day. Spoonful of broth by spoonful of broth. She did not speak much in the first week. She listened. She watched. Tobias was the youngest. He was the gentlest. He had been training to be a doctor with the old physician in Helena until the old man died and Tobias came home to the ranch. He knew arnica. He knew yarrow. He knew wild bergamot. He made her teas. He changed her bandages with hands that never hurried. Caleb was the middle. He was the suspicious one. He did not trust her yet. He watched her with eyes like a hawk watching a mouse it had not yet decided to eat. He brought her food. He chopped wood outside the window. He did not speak to her if he could help it. Eli was the oldest. He was the one she could not look at. When he came into the room, she felt something shift in her chest, something she could not name, something she did not want to name. He brought her water. He brought her firewood. He moved around the cabin in his own house as though he were a guest in it. He did not stay long when she was awake. He could not seem to. She had read his letters more times than she would ever admit. She had imagined his face 1,000 times on the train west. The face in her mind looked nothing like the face by the fire. The face in her mind had been a man on paper. The face by the fire was a man on earth. A man with grief in him she could feel from across the room. A man whose voice in person was so much deeper than she had imagined that hearing him say her name made her have to close her eyes. On her 9th day awake, she was strong enough to stand. She walked, slowly, with the cane Tobias had whittled for her. She walked from the bed to the window, from the window to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the small parlor where the brothers ate. There was a wooden shelf above the parlor fireplace. There was a small box on the shelf. It was made of pine. It was beautifully carved. It had a single word burned into the top: Lenora. Adeline stopped. She did not know why she reached for it. She would later blame her own curiosity, or perhaps the small voice in her that had always known something was wrong with the way Eli would not speak his dead wife's name. She took the box down. She opened it. Inside was a wedding ring. Gold. Simple. Worn smooth on the inside. A ring that had been worn for years and then taken off. She heard the door. She turned. Eli was standing in the doorway. He saw her. He saw the box. He saw the ring in her open palm. He did not move. He did not speak. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. And in that look, she saw the things she had felt from across the room. The grief, but also something else, something he had been carrying so long he no longer knew where to set it down. That belonged to my wife, he said, finally, quietly. I know, I am sorry. She did not die wearing it. I assumed. She did not die at all. Adeline did not move. She stood with the ring in her hand because she was suddenly certain that the man across the room was about to tell her something that would split the cabin in half. She left, Eli said. Left. 2 years ago, she rode out one morning while I was up at the pasture. She took the bay. She took some money. She took her ring off and left it on the kitchen table. She got on a train in Helena and she went east. She is in St. Louis, or she was. I have not heard from her since. Your brothers do not know. Why? Because I asked her once years ago not to be spoken of in shame if anything happened to her, and because I could not bear to tell them, and because by the time I should have told them, the lie had grown too large to take back. He took a slow breath. There is a grave behind the cabin. I dug it. I put a marker on it. There is nothing under the marker. I have been letting my brothers grieve a dead woman for 2 years. She is not dead. She just did not love me enough to stay. The fire snapped. The wind pressed against the walls. Adeline closed her hand around the ring. She looked at this man, this huge grieving man who had carried her up the mountain. This man who had sung Beulah Land into her ear when she was dying. This man who had let his brothers believe a lie for 2 years because he could not bear to tell them his wife had not wanted them either. She had a choice to make. She could keep this secret, or she could put it down between them and let it become the wall. She knew already what she would do. She set the ring back in the box, carefully, the way you set down something that does not belong to you. She closed the lid. She slid the box back onto the shelf. She turned to face him. Mr. Calloway. Eli. Eli, I will not say a word. Adeline. Not to your brothers, not to anyone, not ever. You owe me nothing. I owe you my life. That is not the same as owing me a lie. It is not a lie. It is silence. They are not the same thing. He looked at her a long time. Then he did something that made her chest ache in a way nothing in the entire 11-day journey from Philadelphia had prepared her for. He nodded. Once. Like a man making a vow he could not say aloud, and he turned and went back outside to chop wood. That afternoon she walked out behind the cabin. The snow had stopped for the first time in days. The sun was a pale silver disk. The cold burned her cheeks. The cane Tobias had carved made small even holes in the snow as she walked. She found the marker. It was a wooden cross, hand-carved, weather-beaten. The name Lenora in plain letters, the dates underneath. She stood in front of it for a long time. She thought about the woman she would never meet, the woman who had stood in this cabin and screamed that the quiet was killing her, the woman who had ridden away because she could not become the wife the mountain demanded. Adeline understood her. In some part of herself, she did not want to look as she understood her perfectly. She knelt down in the snow. She set her hand on the cold wood of the cross. She spoke very quietly, as if the woman in the empty grave could somehow hear. I do not know if I will love him the way he needs. I do not know if I will be strong enough. I do not know if I will be the wife he was hoping for when he wrote that advertisement. But I will tell you this, I am not running. Not from you, not from him, not from any of it. Whatever happens here, I am the one who stays. The wind moved through the pines. She thought for one strange moment that the silence felt like an answer. She got up. She walked back to the cabin. Her cheeks were wet, though she did not remember crying. Inside, Eli had built the fire up high. He was sitting in front of it, his huge hands resting on his knees. She came in and shook the snow from her shawl and hung it on the peg by the door. She sat in the rocking chair across from him. She did not say anything. He did not either. After a long while, his hand came up. Slowly, he reached across the small space between the chairs. He set his hand palm up on the arm of her chair. She put her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, carefully, as if she were still made of glass, as if he had been afraid for years to touch anyone. The fire crackled. Somewhere out beyond the cabin walls, a wolf howled, a long single note that rose and fell and rose again. Another wolf answered, farther off, then nothing. Snow began to fall again outside the window. Eli did not speak, neither did she. But she thought in the warmth of his hand around hers that maybe her father had been wrong after all about the thing you do not see coming. Some things you do not see coming, but some of them do not hurt you. Some of them save you. She had been in the cabin of the Calloway brothers for 15 days. She had no idea what was coming next. She had no idea that down in Lolo in the parlor of the Pinewood Inn, Hollis Vance was at that very moment writing a telegram to Cheyenne asking for a man called Cyrus Jenks. A man with one eye. A man who in 14 more days would ride up the trail toward the Calloway place with a question that did not have a good answer. But that was 14 days away. Tonight, by the fire, Adeline Whitcomb held the hand of Eli Calloway, and the snow came down on the mountain, and the wolves sang each other to sleep in the dark. Tonight she was home, even if she did not yet know what the word meant, even if home was about to cost her more than anything she had already lost. Tonight, by the fire, in the silence, she was for the first time in a year exactly where she was supposed to be. Winter on the Bitterroot did not arrive. It settled, like an old man taking off his coat in a house he intended to stay in for months. By the end of November, the snow was up past the porch rail. By the 1st of December, it was up past the windowsill on the north side of the cabin. By mid-December, the only path that still existed in the world as far as Adeline could tell was the one Caleb shoveled every morning between the cabin door and the barn. She had been awake, truly awake, for 3 weeks. She was beginning to forget what Philadelphia had looked like. This frightened her at first, then it did not. She learned the cabin. She learned it the way a child learns a song, slowly, without trying, until one day she realized she knew every word. The kitchen had 4 cast iron pots and 1 good wooden spoon and 3 bad ones. The good spoon had belonged to the brother's mother. Nobody said this out loud. She knew because of the way Tobias picked it up, carefully, always last. The parlor had 2 chairs, 1 rocker, 1 straight-backed, a long bench Caleb had built himself the winter he turned 20. The bench was where Adeline sat now, in the evenings, with a quilt over her knees. The bedroom had been hers since she woke. Eli slept in the barn. He did this without comment, without complaint, without any indication ever that he resented it. He slept in the tack room under 3 wool blankets and the bearskin he had wrapped her in on the mountain. He came in at dawn. He drank his coffee, standing up. He nodded at her. He went out again. She did not know what to do with this. She had been raised in a house where a man's comfort was the center of every room, where her father sat in the best chair, where the warmest spot by the fire was for him, where the largest piece of meat went on his plate without anybody having to think about it. Here, a man slept in a barn so a woman he barely knew could have his bed. She found she did not have a way to say thank you for that, not in any of the words she had been taught, so she did other things instead. She baked his bread the way he liked it, not the soft Philadelphia way, the dense crusted Montana way, the kind of bread that did not fall apart in a man's hand when he was eating it out by the woodpile. She mended his shirt, the brown one, the one with the tear in the shoulder he had been ignoring for what was clearly several months. She mended it while he was outside. She set it back on his peg. She did not say a word about it. He did not say a word about it. But the next morning when he came in for coffee, he wore the shirt, and he looked at her just once across the room, and the look went all the way down into her bones. She did not know what was happening to her. She suspected she knew exactly what was happening to her. She refused to think about it directly, because thinking about it directly would make it true, and making it true would make it dangerous. And dangerous things were the last things she needed in a cabin full of people who had already saved her life once. So she did not think about it, except at night, except in the dark, except every time he came into the room. Tobias began her education the second week of December. He sat her down at the kitchen table. He set out small linen bundles. He opened them one at a time. Arnica, bruises and sprains, steep in hot water. Apply as a compress. Never drink it. Adeline, never drink it. Yarrow, wounds, crush the leaves, press them directly into the cut. It stops bleeding fast enough that you will not believe it the first time you see it. Yarrow, wounds, crush. Wild bergamot, headache, bad dreams, steep as a tea, and add a little honey if we have any. And if we do not have honey, then it tastes like sin and you drink it anyway. She laughed, out loud, for the first time since Philadelphia. Tobias smiled at her over the table. He had a smile like sunrise, slow, warm, honest, the kind of smile she suspected he did not give to many people. You learn fast, he said. I have to. You do not have to, you choose to. Those are different. She looked at him. The youngest brother, the one with the careful hands, the one who read medical books by lamplight after his brothers were asleep, the one who had set her broken arm without breaking it twice. Why are you so kind to me, Tobias? Because you needed it. Because you still do. Because we are not the sort of family that has to be asked. She did not have an answer for that. She drank her wild bergamot tea. It did taste like sin. She drank it anyway. Caleb was different. Caleb did not trust her. Caleb watched her the way a wolf watches a stranger at the edge of his territory. Not aggressively, not unkindly, just constantly, just always. She caught him at it, more than once, in the kitchen, in the barn, across the parlor in the evenings. She would look up from her sewing and there he would be, watching, steady, quiet. She decided one afternoon she had had enough of it. She walked out to the woodpile where he was splitting kindling. She stood with her arms crossed. She waited until he set the axe down. Mr. Calloway. Caleb. Caleb, are you going to have to tell me what it is you suspect me of? Or are you going to keep looking at me like I am about to steal the silverware? He did not laugh. He picked up another piece of wood, set it on the block, raised the axe, brought it down. Then he said, without looking at her, I do not know what you are. I am exactly what you see. Maybe, maybe not. A woman does not come up that trail in November in a Philadelphia silk dress without somebody chasing her. Nobody is chasing me. He set down the axe again. He looked at her. He had Eli's eyes, the same color, the same depth, less weight, more fire. Miss Whitcomb, Adeline, Adeline, I will tell you something my brother will not. Eli has been a dead man walking for 2 years. Whatever you do here, whatever this turns out to be, if you wake him up and then you leave, you will kill him, and I will not forgive you for it. He picked the axe back up. That is not a threat. That is a fact. Go back inside before you freeze. She went back inside. She did not tell Eli about that conversation. She thought about it for a week. She decided Caleb was not wrong to worry. She decided she would have to be worth the risk. The first bad night came on a Tuesday. She had not had a nightmare in days. She had let herself believe she was past them. She was wrong. She woke in the dark screaming. She did not know she was screaming until Tobias was in the room with a lamp. She had been dreaming of Hollis Vance. She had been dreaming of his hand on her wrist. She had been dreaming of the silver hair, the pale eyes, the way he had said her name like it was already a thing he owned. Tobias sat on the edge of the bed. He did not touch her. He waited. When her breathing slowed, he said, very gently, "Who is he?" She closed her eyes. "I cannot." "Adeline." "I cannot, Tobias. Not yet. I am sorry." He nodded. He went and made the bergamot tea. He brought it back. He set it on the table by the bed. "Whenever you can," he said, "we will be here." He left the lamp burning. He closed the door behind him. She drank the tea and she lay in the dark and she stared at the ceiling and she promised herself she would tell them. She promised herself she would tell them tomorrow. She did not tell them tomorrow. She did not tell them the day after. She did not tell them. The lie sat in her chest like a stone. It grew day by day. It got heavier. She told herself she was protecting them. She knew she was protecting herself. The morning Caleb taught her to shoot was a Saturday in late December. The sky was the color of beaten tin. The wind was not blowing for the first time in a week. The cold was the kind that hurts your teeth. He led her out behind the barn. He set up 3 tin cans on a fence post. He handed her the Winchester. "Have you ever held one before?" "No." "Then we will start with the basics. The basics will keep you alive." He showed her the lever, the hammer, the safety, the way to hold the stock against her shoulder. He stood behind her to correct her stance. He did not stand close. He was careful with that. He stood at a respectable distance and corrected her with words. She missed the first can. She missed the second. She hit the third dead center. Caleb said nothing. She turned to look at him. He had a strange expression on his face. "What?" "Do that again." She did it again. 3 cans, 3 shots, 3 hits. He looked at her for a long moment. "Where did you learn that?" "I have never held a rifle in my life." "You hit 3 out of 3 with no practice." "I have not." "Miss Whitcomb." "Adeline." "The line. You are either lying or you are a natural. I do not know which one is worse." She did not know how to answer. She handed him the rifle. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else, from a feeling she had never had before, the feeling that her own body had done something she had not asked it to do, the feeling that there was a person inside her she had not yet been introduced to. That night at supper, Caleb said, "She can shoot." Tobias looked up. Eli looked up. Caleb said, "She can shoot better than I can. After one lesson. Brother, I want you to know that." Eli set his fork down. He looked at Adeline across the table. He did not smile. He did not frown. He looked at her in the way he had looked at her in the parlor the day he told her about Lenora, like a man finally seeing the whole of someone. He said, very simply, "Good." And that was all he said. But she felt it across the table, the way you feel a hand on your back, the way you feel the sun come out from behind a cloud. She did not sleep that night. She did not sleep for a different reason than usual. The thaw started in the 3rd week of January. It was a false thaw. Everybody in the cabin knew it. The sun came out for 4 days. The icicles on the eaves got long, and then they got longer, and then they began drop by drop to die. The world smelled for the first time in 2 months like wet earth. Eli rode down to Lolo with Caleb on the 5th day to get supplies, to get the mail, to take advantage of the thaw before the next storm closed the trail again for another month. Tobias stayed behind. With her, she knew the moment they were gone that something was about to change. She could feel it the way she felt weather changing, in her chest, in the air. She was right. Eli and Caleb came back 2 days later. Eli's face was a thing she could not read. Caleb's was a thing she could read perfectly. Caleb was furious. They came in. They set down the saddlebags. They did not take off their coats. Tobias, brother, get her sat down. Eli. Get her sat down, Tobias, both of you. The parlor. Now. Adeline sat. Tobias sat beside her. Caleb stood at the door. Eli paced once, twice, 3 times in front of the fire. Then he stopped. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. He held it out to her. This was at the post office, addressed to me, from the inn at Lolo. Mrs. Hollister wrote it. She wrote it 3 weeks ago. It took this long for the mail to get through. Adeline took the paper. Her hand shook. She unfolded it. She read it. She read it again. Mrs. Hollister was a woman who did not waste words. The note was 4 lines long. Mr. Calloway, a man came looking for your bride. Older, silver hair, Eastern. Said her name was Adeline Whitcomb. Said he had business with her. She left in the night before he could take her. I do not know what she ran from. I know she ran. Be careful. Mrs. Hollister, Pinewood Inn. Adeline set the note down on her lap. She closed her eyes. 3 pairs of eyes were on her. She had run out of time. She told them. She told them all of it. The contract, the signature, the $11,000, the 4 years she had not known, the way her father had not killed himself, the way she was certain now that he had been killed, the way the man with the silver hair had come to a frontier inn in November and held her wrist and told her she belonged to him. She told him his name, Hollis Vance. She watched the name land on each of their faces. Tobias went white. He took her hand. He held it. Caleb went red. He turned away from her. He put both fists on the mantel. He stared into the fire. Eli did not move at all. She finished. She looked at her lap. The silence in the room was a living thing. When she finally looked up, Eli was looking at her with an expression she could not read. Adeline, I am sorry, I should have. I know I should have. Adeline, I did not want to bring it here, into your home, to your brothers. I did not. Adeline, what? You came to my door with nothing but a name. We owe each other nothing, but we owe ourselves the truth. Now we have it. She started to cry. She did not mean to. She had not cried in front of anyone since her father's funeral. The tears came out anyway. Quiet, without shaking, just water running down her face. Eli crossed the room. He went down on one knee in front of her. His huge hands took hers. Listen to me. The man is in Lolo. The man knows you are here, or he soon will. We have time. Maybe a week, maybe 2. We will not waste it. Do you hear me? Adeline, do you hear me? She nodded. You are not alone anymore. I know. Say it back to me. I am not alone anymore. That is right. He stood. He went to the door. He looked at Caleb. He looked at Tobias. He said, quietly, we have work to do. The next morning, he started laying traps on the trail. Caleb cleaned every rifle in the house. Tobias inventoried the medicine cabinet and the ammunition box with the same calm hands he used on a sprained ankle. Adeline cleaned the windows so she could see out of them in every direction. The cabin became day by day a fortress. And underneath the fortress, day by day, something else became a thing too. She caught Eli looking at her sometimes in the middle of nailing a piece of shutter to a window frame. She caught him standing in the doorway of the kitchen at sunset, watching her stir the stew. She caught herself doing it back, watching him split wood with his sleeves rolled up despite the cold, watching him bend down to scratch the dog behind the ears, watching his huge hands handling the small, fragile things of the world. A lamp wick, the cat, the flour scoop, her own coffee cup when he passed it to her at breakfast, his fingers brushing hers and neither of them mentioning it. Caleb noticed. Caleb did not say anything. Caleb softened toward her by degrees. He brought her coffee in the morning without being asked. He carried in firewood for the parlor stove because he saw her struggle with the heavy pieces. He did not stop watching her, but he watched her now the way you watch over someone instead of the way you watch a stranger. The second nightmare came on a Thursday. She did not scream this time. She woke. She lay still. She listened to her own heart. She got up. She wrapped a quilt around her shoulders. She walked out into the parlor. The fire was low, just embers. Eli was sitting in the rocking chair, in the dark, not reading, not doing anything, just sitting. She stopped in the doorway. "You are awake." "I do not sleep much." "Tonight." "Most nights." She came in. She sat on the bench. She pulled the quilt closer. The fire snapped. Eli. Adeline. What was she like? He did not pretend not to know who she meant. He took a long time to answer. She was a beautiful woman. She was clever. She made me laugh. She could sing every hymn in the Methodist book without ever opening it. She was afraid of horses. She loved roses. She hated the snow. You loved her. I did, I do. Not the way I did, but still. How? Eli, you are asking me how I can love a woman who left me. I am asking how anybody loves anybody, I think. He looked at her. The firelight made his eyes look softer than they were. Or maybe his eyes were softer than they were. She could not tell. I think we love who we love. I think it is not the wound that decides. It is the love that decides whether to keep going through the wound. She did not have an answer. She was 22. He was 32. He had buried things she did not even know the names of. She found her own voice anyway. I am sorry she hurt you. I am sorry she had to. She was suffering. I could not see it in time. Eli. What? I had a dream tonight about my father. Tell me. She told him, sitting on the bench, in the quilt, by the embers. She told him about the piano nobody played, about the apple cake, about the brass lion, about her father's smile that made his mustache twitch, about the way he said, the thing you are afraid of is almost never the thing that hurts you. Eli listened. He did not interrupt. When she was done, he said, he sounds like a good man. He was. You carry him well. She started to cry again. Quietly, the second time in a week, the second time in years. He moved. He moved across the small space between them. He sat on the bench beside her. He put one arm, carefully, like he was setting down a piece of crystal, around her shoulders. She leaned against him. She did not mean to. She did anyway. His shirt smelled of cedar smoke and tobacco, and the faint sweet thing she had smelled on her own flannel shirt the first night she woke. She understood now. The faint sweet thing was him. They sat like that for a long time. He did not kiss her. She did not kiss him. But something passed between them in the dark on that bench by the dying fire that did not need a kiss to be a vow. She slept against his shoulder. She did not know for how long. When she woke, he was still there. The fire was completely out. The sky outside the window was the pale gray of dawn coming. He had not moved. He had let her sleep. She sat up slowly. She looked at him. He looked at her. He said, very softly, "Good morning." She said, very softly, "Good morning." And she went back to the bedroom. And she laid down on the bed that smelled of him because it had been his bed before it was hers. And she stared at the ceiling. And she understood with a clarity she had not had in months that the world had changed shape while she was not looking. The hunter came back from Lolo on a Sunday with the supplies and the news. Eli let him into the kitchen, gave him hot coffee, listened. The hunter was a man named Hawkins, lean, quiet, A man who had spent his whole life in the Bitterroots and did not waste a word. There is a man at the Pinewood asking after a woman, Hawkins said. Older, silver hair, said he was her uncle, said she had run from her family on account of a fever in the head, said he had come to take her home for treatment. Adeline is not his niece. I figured. What else? He hired a man, day before yesterday. Big man, one eye, came up from Cheyenne. They call him Jenks. Eli set his coffee cup down. He set it down slowly, carefully, like a man who did not trust his hand not to crush it. Cyrus Jenks. You know him. By name. Every man in 3 territories knows him by name. He is a bounty hunter. He takes work other men will not take. He has killed 7 men I know of. There are probably more. He is coming up here. When? As soon as the trail clears for 2 days running, the thaw has slowed. Eli looked out the window. The sky was gray. The wind was coming back. Hawkins. Yeah. Thank you. Eli. Hawkins. Whatever you need, the valley knows you. You speak. I will come. So will Vernon. So will the Henrys. So will the McKinley boys. I will not ask men to die for my house. You are not asking. We are saying, Hawkins. You think about it, that is all. Hawkins left. Eli stood at the window a long time. Adeline was in the doorway behind him. She had heard every word. She came up beside him. You should accept their help. I will not put other men's wives in widow's weeds for a fight that is mine. It is not yours. He turned to look at her. It is mine now. She had no answer for that. She had 100 answers for it. None of them would come out. Storm came in that afternoon, worse than any so far. The wind began at noon, and by 3 o'clock the cabin was shaking. The snow piled against the windows. By dark you could not see the barn from the kitchen window. They were trapped together. They had been trapped together for weeks. But tonight felt different. Tonight the wind made it different. Tonight the world ended at the cabin walls. They ate supper by lamplight, stew, bread, the last of the apples from the root cellar. Caleb tried to make a joke about the weather. Nobody laughed. Tobias tried to make a joke about Caleb's joke. Everyone laughed too long. They cleared the dishes. Caleb went to bed early. Tobias followed. Adeline sat on the bench in the parlor. Eli sat in the rocker. The fire was high. The wind beat against the cabin. The cabin held. He spoke first. Tomorrow we start the second line of traps. Closer in. We will have to assume he brings more than just Jenks. He will. He brought 11 men to Philadelphia for my father. He will bring more for me. How do you know? Because he is a man who likes to win. Adeline. Yes. If this goes badly. Eli. Listen. I do not want to listen. If this goes badly, I want you to do something for me. Eli. You take a horse, the bay. She is the fastest. You go north. You do not go south. South is where he came from. You go north. There is a town called St. Ignatius. There is a Jesuit mission. They will take you in. They will not give you up to any man. Do you understand me? I am not leaving you. Delane, I am not leaving you. You will if I am dead. You will not be dead. If I am. Eli. He stopped. She had stood up. She stood in front of him. The fire was behind her. He could not see her face clearly. He could see the shape of her. She said, I came up this mountain in a silk dress in the snow because I had nowhere else to go. I sat by your dead wife's empty grave and I made her a promise that I am the one who stays. I have made it to you now too, even if you did not hear me make it. I am the one who stays, Eli Calloway. Do not ever ask me to leave you again. Not even if you are dying. Not even if you are dead. Especially not then. He did not move. For a long time he did not move. Then he stood up. He was so much taller than her. He always was. But standing in front of her in the firelight, he seemed bigger than usual, bigger than a man should be. He put his hands on either side of her face, very carefully, like the day in the parlor when she had been holding Lenore's ring, like he was afraid she would break, or she would vanish, or both. He looked at her. For a long moment he just looked at her. Then he bent his head down, and he set his forehead against hers, and he closed his eyes. She closed hers too. They stood like that for what could have been a minute, or an hour, or the rest of their lives. He did not kiss her. He could have. She thought he was going to. He did not, because he was a careful man, a man who had been wrong once, a man who did not want to be wrong again, a man who had decided 2 years ago that he did not get to want things anymore, a man who was just now beginning to understand that he might have been wrong about that too. She did not kiss him either, because she was 22, and she had never been kissed, and she was not going to have her first kiss be a goodbye kiss. And she could feel that this was a goodbye kiss waiting to happen. Because tomorrow or the day after that, the man with the silver hair was coming. And there was a chance, a real chance, that one or both of them was not going to be standing on this side of it. So she did not kiss him, she did the other thing. She did the thing that was harder than a kiss, the thing that was a kind of vow in itself. She put her arms around his waist. She set her cheek against his chest. She listened to his heart. It was the steadiest thing she had ever heard. He wrapped his arms around her, slowly, as if he had forgotten how, as if he were learning all over again. He held her against him. He set his chin on the top of her head. He breathed in. If we live through tomorrow, yes. I would like to ask you something proper, not because we have to, because I want to. Then we have to live, Eli Calloway. I will do my best. Do better than that. He laughed, quietly, once, into her hair. She had not heard him laugh before. She decided then and there that she would do anything in the world to hear that sound again. They did not sleep that night. They sat together on the bench, wrapped in the quilt. They did not speak much. They watched the fire die down. They watched the wind beat against the windows. They listened to each other breathe. At some point near dawn, Eli reached into his shirt pocket. He pulled out a small leather cord, plain, hand-braided. It had been one of the things he carried as habit. A bit of leather he used to tie up other things. He took her left hand. He looked at her. He waited until she nodded. She nodded. He tied the leather cord around her ring finger, carefully, with a single small knot. Not because we are married, he said, not even because we are engaged. We will do that proper with words and a preacher if God lets us. This is for now, for tonight, so you know. So I know what? So you know I picked you. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens after, I picked you, Adeline Whitcomb, you hear? I hear you. She did not cry. She had cried enough in this cabin. She looked down at the small piece of dark leather on her finger, the simplest ring any woman had ever been given, the only one she had ever wanted. She covered it with her other hand, and she said, "Then we live, Eli. Then we live." The light came up gray over the bitterroots. The wind was beginning to die. In 2 days, 3 at most. The trail would be passable, and the man with one eye would ride up it, and after him, behind him, the man with silver hair. Inside the cabin on the high mountain, 3 brothers and a woman from Philadelphia checked their rifles, counted their ammunition, stacked their dynamite by the door, locked the shutters, set water by every window, made bread, banked the fire. They were ready, or they thought they were. They did not know yet that before the silver-haired man arrived, before Jenks arrived, before any of it, the woman who was supposed to be dead, the first wife, the one Eli had buried in name only, Lenora Calloway, was about to walk back up that mountain. And the cabin that had finally, after 2 years, learned how to hold one ghost, was about to be asked to hold 2. She came in the morning, through the side door, the one that opened on the barn. Caleb saw her first. He had gone out to feed the horses. He came back in without the bucket of oats. He came back in white in the face. Eli. What? Brother, come outside. Caleb, come outside now. Eli set down his coffee cup. He stood up. Adeline stood up too. Tobias was already moving. All of you stay here. Eli, stay here, Adeline, please. She did not stay there. She followed him to the door. She stopped at the threshold. She did not step out into the snow. She did not have to step out, because the woman was already coming up the path from the barn, slowly, like a person who was not sure she had the right to be there, wrapped in a man's coat. The coat was too big. The hat was too big. The boots were Caleb's old ones. She had taken them from the barn. Her face was bruised down one side. The bruise was old. It was yellow and green at the edges. The kind of bruise that has been healing for a week, maybe two. Adeline knew the bruise. She had worn one just like it. The woman stopped 6 feet from Eli. She took the hat off. Her hair was the color of wheat. There was gray at the temples. She had been beautiful once. She still was, in a way, but the kind of beautiful that had been worn down by something, the kind that had been used hard and put away wet. She did not look at Adeline. She did not look at Caleb. She looked at Eli. She said, "Hello, Eli." He did not move. He did not speak. He looked at her the way a man looks at a thing he has spent 2 years trying not to dream about. She said, "I am sorry." He did not say anything. She said, "I had nowhere else to go." Caleb made a sound, low, in his throat. The sound of a man who has just understood something he did not want to understand. The sound of a man who has just realized he has been lied to for 2 years by his own brother. Caleb said, "Eli," Eli said. "Caleb," Caleb said. "Brother, brother, brother," each one quieter than the last. Tobias was standing very still in the doorway behind Adeline. He had not moved. He did not move now. He was looking at the woman in the man's coat the way a doctor looks at something he cannot quite diagnose. Tobias said, "Lenora." She turned to him. Her eyes filled. "Hello, Tobias. You are not dead." "I am not dead." "Eli." "Yes." "Tell me she is not dead." "She is not, Tobias. She is not. She never was." Tobias did not say anything else for a long time. He put one hand against the door frame. He held it. He looked at his oldest brother. He looked at his oldest brother for a long time. Adeline stepped to one side. She let Lenora in. Lenora saw her then, saw her for the first time. The young woman in the doorway. In a calico dress Adeline had sewn herself from cloth Caleb had brought up from Lolo, with a leather cord on her left ring finger. Lenora looked at the leather cord. Lenora looked at Adeline. Lenora's mouth did something that was not quite a smile. "You must be her," Lenora said. I must be." "The girl in the advertisement." "Yes." "Are you strong enough?" Adeline thought about it, honestly as she had ever thought about anything. "I do not know yet," she said. "I am going to find out." Lenora nodded. She seemed almost relieved. "That is the right answer," she said. "I gave a wrong one once, or maybe not wrong, just not strong enough. I do not know yet either." She walked past Adeline, into the cabin, slowly, the way a woman walks into a church she has not been to in years. Eli followed her. Caleb followed Eli. Tobias followed Caleb. Adeline came last and closed the door behind them. In the parlor with us 4 of them watching, Lenora sat down in the rocking chair. The chair Eli always sat in. She did not seem to notice. Maybe she did. Maybe she did notice and she sat there anyway. To prove something or to remember something. She told them everything. She had gone to St. Louis. She had found work in a milliner's shop. She had met a man named Edgar Birch. Edgar had been kind for 6 months. Edgar had been less kind after that. Edgar had started to drink. Edgar had started with his hands. She had stayed too long, the way women do. The way she now understood her own mother had. The way she now understood she had always sworn she would not. 3 weeks ago, she had taken what was left of her own money. She had bought a ticket west. She had not known where else to go. She had thought on the train that she would simply ride past the Bitterroots, through Helena, into Idaho, into Oregon, into the ocean, into whatever came after. She had gotten off at Helena. She had walked into Lolo on foot, in a thaw, in boots that did not fit. She had not meant to come up the mountain. She had told herself the whole walk from town that she would just see it, from a distance, from the road below the ridge, just see if the cabin was still there, just see if the man she had once called her husband was still alive. Then it had gotten dark. Then it had gotten cold. Then she had been at the edge of the woodlot. Then she had been at the barn. Then she had been in the barn. Then she had slept there. 2 nights, eating snow. Then this morning, Caleb had come for the oats, and she had come out of the dark of the barn because she had run out of nights to hide in barns, because the place she had been hiding in had also been a place she had once lived, because everything she had run from was waiting for her at the end of every road she had run down. So she might as well stop running. She finished. She looked at her hands in her lap. She did not look at any of them. The silence in the cabin was very large. Caleb was the one who broke it. He did not break it the way Adeline expected. He walked across the parlor. He knelt down in front of Lenora. He took her hands in his. His big, rough hands swallowed hers. He said, "Welcome home." She broke. She cried in a way Adeline had only seen one other person cry. Her father, the week her mother died. The kind of cry that comes from a place under the lungs that nobody talks about. Caleb did not let go of her hands. Eli was at the window, his back to the room. His shoulders had a set to them like a man holding up a piece of the sky. Adeline went to him. She did not touch him. She just stood beside him, close enough that their sleeves touched. She said, very quietly, "Eli," he said, very quietly, "I do not know what to do. You do. Adeline, you do. You know exactly what to do. You let her sit by your fire. You feed her. You let Tobias look at the bruise. You do not ask her any questions she cannot answer. And tonight when the parlor is quiet, you will say to her what you need to say. And she will say what she needs to say. And then we will be a house with one more person in it until she decides what she wants to do next." Adeline, yes. Are you not afraid? She thought about that. She thought about it honestly. She said, "I was, for about 3 minutes. When she came up the path, I am not anymore." "Why?" "Because you tied this thing on my finger before she got here, Eli Calloway. Not after. Before. You did not know she was coming. You did not pick me because she was gone. You picked me because you picked me. So I am not afraid of her. I am sorry for her. That is not the same thing." He took a long breath in and out. He took her hand, the one with the leather cord. He held it for a moment. He squeezed. He let go. He went to feed Lenora. That night, Adeline sat with Lenora by the fire. The brothers had gone to bed, or had pretended to. The cabin was very quiet. The snow had started again, lightly, the way snow falls when winter has nothing left to prove. Lenora wore a clean nightdress Adeline had loaned her. They were close enough in size that it almost fit. She had washed her face. She had a cup of bergamot tea in her hands. Tobias had dosed it with a little laudanum, just enough. He had said her sleep would need help tonight. She was already drowsy. She said, "Adeline." "Yes." "Will you do me a kindness?" "If I can." "Do not let me stay." "Lenora." "Listen to me, please. I am not strong enough to leave him twice. If I stay a week, if I stay 2 weeks, if I stay until spring, I will start again. I will start being the wife who could not stand it. I will start hating the snow. I will start hating his quiet. I will hurt him in the same shape I hurt him before. I cannot do that to him. I cannot do that to him again. Lenora, promise me. That is not my promise to make. It is, because he will let me stay. He is too kind. He will let me stay because he thinks he owes me something. He does not. He does not owe me anything. I gave it back when I left. She was crying again, quietly, without making any noise. She said, help me leave. Help me leave in a way that does not destroy him. That is the kindness. Help me leave so I can keep being sorry for the rest of my life instead of becoming something he has to be sorry for all over again. Adeline took her hand. She held it. She said, I hear you. Promise I hear you, Lenora. I promise I hear you. I will help you in the way that does the least damage. I cannot promise more than that. That is enough. Sleep now. Adeline. Yes. He found a good one this time. Tell him I said so. After. She was asleep before Adeline could answer. Adeline sat with her until the tea had cooled in her hand. Then she covered her with a quilt. She banked the fire. She blew out the lamp. She went to bed. She did not sleep much. In the morning, Lenora was gone. She had taken Caleb's bay mare. She had taken the saddlebags Caleb kept ready in the tack room. She had taken $30 from the kitchen jar. She had taken one of Tobias's medicine bundles. She had left a note on the kitchen table. 2 lines. Tell Eli I am sorry. Tell him I finally heard the thing I should have heard the first time. Lenora. Caleb found the note. He read it. He set it back down on the table. He did not say a word. He went out to chop wood. The sound of his axe through the morning was steady and hard, and the kind of sound a man makes when he is splitting other things along with the kindling. Tobias read the note next. He folded it. He put it in his pocket. He kept it there. Adeline saw him touch his pocket sometimes after for weeks, just to know it was there. Eli read it last. He read it. He sat down at the kitchen table. He put his face in his hands. He cried. He did not make a sound. His shoulders shook. His hands shook. He did not move them from his face for what must have been 10 minutes. Adeline sat beside him. She did not touch him. She let him have it. When he could move his hands again, he looked at her. His eyes were red. His face was wet. He looked in that moment exactly as old as he was. Maybe older, maybe younger, both at once, the way a person looks when they have just finished something. She said, she told me last night to let her go. She said she could not leave you twice. I would have let her stay. She knew. I would have. She knew. That was the whole problem. That was why she had to go before you woke up. He nodded. He nodded slowly. He took her hand, the one with the cord on it. He held it for a long time. He did not say anything. He did not have to. The cabin was still a house with one ghost in it. But this morning the ghost had a name on it, and the name was no longer pretending to be on a grave marker out back. The name was on a piece of paper in Tobias's pocket. The name was on a horse riding west. The name was alive. The name was finally allowed to be where it actually was. The cabin breathed differently after that. Adeline could feel it. So could the brothers. They did not speak about it. They did not have to. 2 days later, Hawkins came up the mountain with the news that Jenks had ridden in the night before. It was time. Vance came on a Saturday morning in the 3rd week of January. The sky was the color of slate. The wind was steady out of the north. The snow had been packed hard by 3 days of cold. The trail was open. They had been ready for him for 48 hours. Caleb on the loft, 2 rifles, a box of ammunition, line of sight on the trail and the side approach. Tobias by the back door, bow across his knees, quiver of arrows on the bench, 3 rifles set up in stands at the windows, Eli at the front, Colt on his hip, Winchester at his shoulder, Adeline at the north window, Winchester, 20 rounds in her apron pockets, 3 more boxes on the floor at her feet. Hawkins had come. So had Vernon. So had the Henry boys. So had the McKinleys. Eli had finally said yes. 6 other men, spread along the ridges, hidden in the timber, not in the fight directly, but there, if it went long. If Vance brought more than Eli expected, Eli had asked them to take no shot they did not have to. He had said, if we can end it on the porch, we end it on the porch. Nobody dies who does not have to die. Hawkins had said. Eli. What? Some of them are going to have to die. I know. All right. They came up the trail at noon. There were 14 of them, not counting Vance. Not counting Sheriff Holloway, who rode in front pretending this was a lawful posse. They were heavily armed. They were spread out the way a man spreads out his men when he has read a book about it, but never actually fought. Jenks rode at the head. Eli saw the eye patch through the field glass. He set down the glass. He said, Caleb. Loft. Tobias. Back. Adeline. North window. You see Vance, you take Vance. Nobody else takes Vance. Vance is hers. Eli. Adeline. Yes. Wait until I say, not before, not after. Yes. Jenks rode within shouting distance of the porch. He raised his hand. He stopped his men. He shouted, Calloway, the lady is wanted in Cheyenne. We have a paper. Bring her out. Save your house. Eli's voice came from inside the cabin, through the gun slit Caleb had cut in the front door 3 days ago. That paper is not worth the spit on the ink. I am not here to argue about it. Then ride down off this mountain. Calloway. Last warning, Jenks. Jenks laughed. Jenks took a step forward. Jenks tripped the wire Eli had set 2 nights before. The dynamite went off under his feet. The world turned white. When Adeline could see again, 4 men were down. The horses had bolted. The smell of black powder and burnt pine was everywhere. The snow was no longer white. The snow was the same color as her dress had been the day they found her. The shooting started then. Caleb fired from the loft. Once, twice, 3 times. A man went down each time he worked the lever as smooth as a metronome. A man tried to circle to the back door. Tobias did not even stand up. He drew the bow. He let the arrow go. The man fell where he stood and did not move. 3 more came up the porch. Eli kicked the front door open. He fired the Colt. 2 men dropped. The 3rd got a shot off. The shot took Eli high in the side, just under the ribs. He grunted. He did not fall. He fired again. The 3rd man went down. Adeline screamed. She did not mean to. She could not help it. Caleb yelled from the loft. Eli. I am up. I am up. Keep shooting. The fighting went on. 6 minutes, maybe 7. It felt like an hour. It felt like a life. The men in the timber came down off the ridges when Jenks's men started trying to retreat into the trees. Hawkins shot 2. Vernon shot 1. The McKinley boys shot 2 more between them. Sheriff Holloway threw down his rifle and put his hands up and shouted that he had been forced into this, and Hawkins walked over and tied his wrist with a length of harness rope without saying a word. It was by all the accounting that mattered later almost over. Except for Vance. Adeline knew he was not on the trail. She'd been watching for him from the north window. The whole fight, she had not fired her rifle once, because the man she was looking for had never come up the front. She knew because she knew him. She knew because a man like Hollis Vance does not walk up the front of anything he means to take. She heard the sound she had been listening for. Down in the kitchen. Faint. The sound of the cellar door opening from the outside. There was a back way into the root cellar, from the trap door under the kitchen. The brothers had built the cabin themselves, and they had built it 40 years too late to remember every old plank in it. Someone who had paid Sheriff Holloway for information would know about the trap door. Vance knew about the trap door. Adeline did not call out. She did not warn anyone. She picked up the Winchester. She picked up the lamp. She walked into the kitchen. She set the lamp on the table. She lifted the trap door. She went down. She did not even think about it. She would only realize later that her hands did not shake going down those steps. The cellar was cold and dark. The lamp she had brought from upstairs swung from a hook in the low ceiling. The light moved over the rows of jarred peaches, salt pork hanging from the rafters, the smell of damp earth and apples. He was waiting for her. Of course he was. A man like Hollis Vance does not come into a cellar without making sure he gets to be the one waiting. He stood at the back, by the cellar door he had come in through. His pistol was in his hand. It was not pointed at her, not yet. He had a small smile on his face, the same smile from the pine wood, the smile that said this was all a misunderstanding she was about to have explained to her. He said, "Adeline." She said, "Mr. Vance. Where is your protector now, little girl?" "I do not need one." He laughed. It was a short, dry laugh. The kind of laugh a man uses when he is not sure something is funny, but he wants to fill the silence. "You came down here alone." "I did." "That is foolish." "Maybe." "I have killed men, Adeline, but I am not a man you fight." "I have done that math." "Then what are you doing here?" She raised the Winchester. She put the bead on his chest. He raised the pistol, but she was faster. She had always been faster, even with no practice, even with one good lesson and 3 tin cans on a fence post. Her body had always been faster than her mind. Caleb had seen it first. Eli had seen it after. Now Hollis Vance was about to see it last. She said, "I am being my father's daughter, Mr. Vance." She pulled the trigger. The shot was very loud in the small space. It took him just under the collarbone. He stepped back. His pistol came up halfway. He did not fall. She worked the lever. He looked at her. He looked at her with something on his face she did not recognize. Not fear, not yet. Something earlier than fear. "Surprise," she said. "My father did not kill himself." "Adeline, you did." "Adeline, you did you not?" He coughed. Blood came up. "Not much, just enough," he said. "He came back to me. After he signed, he came back. He said he had changed his mind. He said he would pay any other way. He said he would die first. And I let him." "You did more than let him." "Adeline, did you not?" He smiled. The smile was almost an apology. The smile was not. "Your father was a weak man," he said. "You are not. I will give you that before." She did not let him finish the sentence. She pulled the trigger again. This time he fell. He did not get up. She stood there for a long moment. The lamp swung above her. The light moved over the dead man and the rows of peaches and the salt pork and the floor that was very slowly beginning to become the same color as the snow had been outside. She lowered the rifle. She did not cry, she said, very softly, to the man on the cellar floor. And maybe to her father, and maybe to herself. "He is with me every day. He always was. You did not understand him at all." She climbed back up the stairs. She closed the trap door behind her. She set the rifle on the kitchen table. She walked into the parlor. Eli was on the floor. Tobias was kneeling over him. Tobias's hands were inside his brother's shirt. Tobias's hands were wet and red, and he was working as fast as she had ever seen a person work in her life. She got down beside him. She did not say anything. She started doing what Tobias told her to do. She tore strips of linen from the sheet on the bed. She fetched the kettle. She fetched the whiskey. She held Eli's hand while Tobias dug the bullet out and packed the wound and stitched it closed with the same calm hands that had stitched her cuts 6 weeks before. Eli did not pass out. He looked at her the whole time. He said twice, "You are not crying." She said twice, "Not yet." She cried a week later, when he opened his eyes from the fever and recognized her face and smiled. She cried for a long time then, quietly into the front of his shirt, while he tried to lift his hand to her hair and could not quite get it up that high yet. He said, "Adeline," she said. Yes, he said. I would like to ask you something proper. She laughed. Through the tears, she said, then ask. He asked. She said yes. She would have said yes anyway. She had said yes the first night she put her cheek to his chest by the dying fire. She had said yes the morning she sat by Lenora's empty grave and made a promise to a woman who was not there. She had said yes when she walked down into the cellar with the Winchester in her hands. She had been saying yes to him for a long time. She just had not used the word until now. 3 months later, a letter came from a law office in Cheyenne. Hollis Vance had left no living relatives. He had left a will. He had been a vain man and an arrogant man and a controlling man, but he had also been a man who kept his paperwork in order. He had named as his sole heir the young woman who would soon be his wife. The young woman was Adeline. The lawyer wrote that the estate was considerable. Cattle, land, a silver mine in the Wind River Range, a house in Cheyenne, cash on deposit in 3 banks, a herd of horses, a library of 300 books of which the lawyer noted with what Adeline imagined was a wry expression, more than half were on subjects of cruelty disguised as economics. The total value was somewhere over $180,000. Adeline read the letter twice. She handed it to Eli. He read it. He gave it back to her. He said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "None of it is mine." Adeline, none of it. It was his. It was bought with what he did to my father. It was bought with what he did to 100 other men, I am sure, before he ever got to my father. I will not have 1 penny of it for me. I will not have a stitch of it for us. I will not have it sitting in any account with my name on it. I will not. All right, I want to give it away. All right. She thought for 3 days. She wrote 3 letters. The Salish people had been pushed off their land in the valley below the Bitterroots over the previous 15 years, some by lawful treaty, some by less lawful means. Vance had owned a piece of that land. Adeline did not know how. She did not want to know. She wrote to the agent at the Flathead Reservation. She sent 1/3 of the estate to be used at the discretion of the elders, with one condition, that no white man should ever be on the committee that decided how it was spent. She wrote to the town of Lolo, to the small council that met in the back of the general store. She sent 1/3, with instructions, half for a school that would teach reading and figuring to any child in the valley who wanted to come with no payment ever asked of any kind from any family, half for a doctor's office, with salary for a doctor for the first 10 years. She suggested but did not insist that the council might consider hiring a young man named Tobias Calloway once he had finished his proper schooling in St. Louis, which she would also be paying for. The last third she sent west, to a milliner's shop in San Francisco, to a young woman who had been working there since the spring, who had ridden out of Montana on a stolen bay mare in January, who had not been seen by anybody but Adeline since. The letter to Lenora was the shortest of the 3. For you, not for him, for you, so you never have to stay anywhere because you have nowhere else to go. Adeline. She mailed the letters. She kept for herself nothing, except a single thing from Vance's library, a worn leather diary she had asked the lawyer to send separately. The diary had not belonged to Vance. The diary had belonged to her father. Vance had kept it as a trophy. The diary held in her father's neat hand the record of every payment he had ever made to Vance, and at the end, the last entry, in a hand that shook. He intends to take her on her birthday. I will not let him. If you find this, my dear Addie, know that I tried. Know that I am sorry. Know that you are the only thing in this life I ever loved without condition. Your father. She kept that, nothing else. They were married in the spring. On the porch, Hawkins' wife sewed her dress out of soft blue calico. Tobias gave her away because Eli liked the symmetry of it, his brother handing her across into the rest of her life. Caleb stood up for Eli. The preacher came up from Lolo, a small, kind man named Reverend Hollis, who shared by sad coincidence a first name with the man Adeline had shot in the cellar. She thought the first time she heard him introduce himself that this was the world's small joke. She let it be funny. She let it be over. She wore Lenora's ring. Lenora had sent it back that spring in a small parcel from San Francisco with a note that said only this. It was always meant for the woman who stayed. Adeline wore it on her right hand. The leather cord stayed on her left. She wore both for the rest of her life. People asked sometimes in town about the leather cord. She would smile. She would say, "He gave it to me first. The other one is the legal one. This one is the true one." 30 years passed. The cabin became a house. Then it became a bigger house. Then it became a house with 5 bedrooms and a porch that wrapped on 3 sides and a garden that grew by the end the best tomatoes in the territory. They had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. The eldest girl they named Ruth after Eli's mother. The second girl they named for a friend in San Francisco. None of the children ever met, but whose name they grew up hearing in their mother's voice with such warmth that they always assumed she had been a beloved aunt. Maybe she had been, in a way. Caleb did not marry until he was 42. He met a young Salish woman named Mary Birdsong, who had grown up in the community that had benefited in ways she did not yet know from the silent generosity of a girl from Philadelphia. They married in 1896. They had 3 children. The oldest he named for his older brother. The second he named for his younger. The youngest he named with permission and without explanation Adeline. Tobias went east to St. Louis. He finished his medical training in 1888. He came home. He opened the office in Lolo. He married a quiet woman named Verity, who had lost her first husband to a winter accident. They had 2 children. Verity called him doctor in private and Toby in public, and he called her wife in both places. Lenora wrote every year, always at Christmas. The letters were short. They were warm. She had married in 1889 a goldsmith named Alistair Reed. She had had no children by choice. She was happy. She wrote in 1899, "Tell Eli I finally found my mountain. Mine just happens to be by the ocean." Adeline read that line aloud by the fire that Christmas night. Eli laughed, quietly, once. The way he laughed at the things that mattered. Time did the things time does. The hair at Adeline's temples went silver in her 40s. By her 50s, it was all silver. Eli's beard, which had been so dark the day she met him, went gray almost overnight after the children came, the way it does for some men. Caleb did not gray until he was nearly 60. Tobias did not gray at all somehow, which the rest of the family considered an outrage, and the local children considered evidence that he was a wizard. The afternoon she would always remember best of all those years was a Sunday afternoon in October of 1913. She was 52 years old. She was sitting on the porch. The porch wrapped around the south and east sides of the house. The view east was straight down the valley all the way to the river. The view south was up into the high country toward the pass where she had once collapsed under a pine tree in a red silk dress. Eli was beside her. His hand was on her knee. His hand had been on her knee in that exact way on that exact porch on 1,000 Sundays before. He was 62. He moved more slowly now. He still moved. Their granddaughter came running up the porch steps. Sarah Adeline Calloway, 7 years old. Tobias's youngest. The one with the wheat-colored hairs and the blue eyes and the inability to ever under any circumstances sit still. Sarah Adeline climbed into Adeline's lap, the way she did every Sunday, the way she had since she was 3. She said, "Grandma, tell me the story." "Which story, sweetheart?" "The one about the silk dress, the one about the snow, the one about how you came to the mountain." Adeline smiled. She had told this story dozens of times by now. The children's version, the version with the bad man cut out, the version with the cellar cut out, the version that ended on the porch with the wedding in the blue calico. She told it again. She told it slowly. She told it the way you tell a story that you are going to need someone else to remember after you are gone. The little girl listened the way small girls listen, with her whole body, with her mouth slightly open, with one finger absently playing with the leather cord on Adeline's left hand. When the story was done, Sarah Adeline said, "Grandma, yes, baby. Were you scared when you came up the mountain?" Adeline looked down at her. She thought about it. She gave her granddaughter the honest answer, the one she would want the little girl to remember when she herself was old. "Yes, I was scared. I was very scared. But the mountain was not where I was going. The mountain was who I was becoming. So I kept going." Sarah Adeline thought about that. She nodded. She rested her head against Adeline's shoulder and did not say anything else. The sun began to slide behind the high ridges. The light turned the color of honey. The first snow of the season had been promised by Tobias, who was usually right about such things. And as Adeline looked east down the valley, she saw for the first time that year the small, bright flakes coming down through the slanted gold light. She squeezed Eli's hand. He squeezed back. She said, very softly, "This is where I belong." He said, very softly, "Right where you are supposed to be." He had been saying it to her for almost 30 years. He would say it for 9 more. In all that time, he never once said it any other way. The snow began to fall faster. It fell on the porch rail. It fell on the wide pine boards Eli had planned himself the year their first son was born. It fell on the roof of the small house out back where Caleb and Mary Pearl birdsong and their grown children would be coming for supper. It fell on the silver in her hair. It fell on the leather cord he had tied around her finger 30 winters before, on a night she had been certain neither of them would live to see the morning. The cord had grown soft and dark with time. It had never come off. She closed her eyes. She thought about her father, about the lion knocker, about the apple cake, about the man with the silver hair in the parlor of the Pinewood Inn. She thought about a young woman in a torn red dress lying under a pine tree in November, watching the snow come down through the branches and thinking what a beautiful thing to be the last thing she ever saw. That young woman had not been the last thing she ever saw. That young woman had been, it turned out, only the very first. The wind moved softly through the porch. The granddaughter in her lap had fallen asleep. Eli's hand was warm. The house behind them smelled of bread and roasting meat, and the children inside laughing. Adeline opened her eyes. She watched the snow come down, and she thought, yes, yes, this is the life I was running toward. I just did not know it yet.